If I told you that the Matrix Resurrections had hidden meanings, you would laugh in my face and say, of course it does, it's a Matrix movie. But why is the choice always between the red pill and the blue pill, the Matrix and the real world? Why do we never choose to question this? Why do we never choose to take both pills? Why do we never choose to take neither? What happens when we do? This video will unpack the hidden meaning of Matrix Resurrections, red, blue, neither, or both. The biggest choice we have in life, if you're in the Matrix, is the red or blue pill. To stay plugged into this simulation or free yourself and awaken and be in the real world. Experience things for how they are and not how they're made. But I came across a very interesting article from Fries.com unpacking the hidden meanings in the Matrix Resurrections by Mackenzie Work. And this raises so many interesting ideas. Because, as I've talked about before, with film being subjective, we have different interpretations of meanings that we think a film is trying to convey. Does it make us right? Does it make us wrong? Whatever way that film speaks to us as a person is what we believe. And it's about discovering that for yourself by watching a film or rewatching a film. Not just once, not just twice, maybe several times. But I want to read this out to you and I want to get your thoughts about this because it's very, very interesting, it's very deep, and it makes you question what really is the Matrix. From the red, blue pill symbolism to the trans allegory, Mackenzie Ward muses on the real-life narrative surrounding the simulated world of the Matrix. My favourite meme from the Matrix film series has an incredulous Morpheus ask, "What do you mean you took both pills?" In the narrative arc, the blue pill takes you to the simulated world, the red pill is your exit. Welcome to the desert of the real, as Morpheus says to Neo, when he takes the red one, stealing a line from Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation. To enjoy the world of the Matrix, we must accept this conceit of an exit from the simulation, within what is obviously a pure extrusion of it. In narrative terms, it's red pill versus blue pill, but structurally, the choice is actually to take both pills, or neither. A lot of reviews of the most recent film in the franchise, The Matrix Resurrections, profess to take neither. They're written with an "I don't buy it" tone, which of course is a double bind. Even to acknowledge these films exist makes it impossible to not take a pill. If you accept that the films are real, then you accept that the Matrix exists. You're in on it, and paradoxically compelled to choose your pills. There's a whole subculture that already imagines itself as red-pilled. It's both ironic and not that the main subculture to have adopted this language is extremely online men, who want to believe that everything they've been taught about how the world works, and in particular how gender works, is all a scam to which they have awoken up. It's ironic that the other subculture to have embraced the Matrix franchise is trans people, particularly trans women, for whom it's a story about coming out. This was a thing before the film's directors, the Wachowskis, transitioned. At the time the first film dropped in 1999, the most widely prescribed medication for trans women in the US was Premarin, a red pill. While in narrative terms, there's a choice of pills, in structural terms, there's no choice. Viewers have to take both. The heroic, red-pilled revolutionaries end up spending most of their screen time back in the Matrix. For there to be a real world, there has to be a simulation, and vice versa. The famously implausible reason the Matrix keeps real humans alive is to use as an energy source. What makes more sense is that it feeds on our creative, emotional, and intellectual energy. The Matrix lives by extracting surplus information from us. The revolutionaries in and against it want the surplus information they generate to produce a simulation over which they have agency, built for their stimulation and pleasure. The best image of this in the whole franchise, and my favourite moment, is in The Matrix Reloaded. In Zion, home base of the Revolution, the night before it goes into defensive mode against seemingly inevitable destruction, there's a rave. It's multi-racial, intergenerational, if somewhat heterosexual, and hot as fuck. Now, that's closer to the simulation many of us want. The Matrix Resurrections has callbacks to many moments from the first 3 films, but not the rave. Still, I think its pleasures have been underappreciated. Lana Wachowski's direction has become less tightly controlled. The meeting between Neo and Trinity in a coffee shop called Simulate is delightful. It's a lovely film about love, longing, and regret in middle age. Maybe it's just a me thing, but there's also much pathos in it as a film about late transition. Like the Wachowskis, I came out as trans later in my life, at which my fascination with all of their work made a new kind of sense. I see a lot of my pre-transition self in Neo's deep sadness, his failed coping devices, and how he learns to become the person he needs to be from younger people. It's a film not particularly interested in narrative, but in playfully condensing and laminating together fragments of stories, characters, situations, feelings, ideas, moods, images, and references. It's a film that knows it's in the Matrix, aware that its viewers perceive it as a piece of what Hiroki Hasuma in Japan's database Animals calls database culture. The grand narrative of the franchise is just background. What tickled my attention are things like the captain of the rebel ship looking like a blue hair and pronouns NB, or the crew member called Berg who has tattoos based on the logo for the Berlin nightclub Bergan. Narrative is just the frame for a smorgasbord of curated detail. Big budget franchises are the grand museum shows of our time. This film is less a story than a walkthrough guided tour. It's the Matrix retrospective. I believe it's up there with Mad Max Fury Road for the scale and style for which its thousands of artisans have fabricated the actual and digital artifacts of their particular formalist aesthetic worlds. If we must live in this simulation and there's not much choice about that, let it be artful. Let it be self-aware. I found that to be a very interesting perspective of what The Matrix Resurrections conveys and what The Matrix as a whole conveys as well. The author of this is a trans woman, so she would have more of a relationship to this film maybe than others who are not trans. But then the parts of The Matrix Resurrections that spoke to me was seeing Neo as this man with no meaning in his life, living the same day over and over again, this loop of not doing what he wants to do, not having that love in his life. But I'm not trans. But that's what I took away from the movie. And I'm sure other people out there who are not trans had different things to take away from the movie as well. That's very interesting. And I love the argument about why do we have to choose between the blue pill and the red pill? Why not take both? Or why not take either? Because if we acknowledge that there is pills, if we acknowledge that we have to take one, then we acknowledge that a matrix exists. And without the matrix, there cannot be a real world. And without the real world, there cannot be a matrix. So what happens if you take both? What happens if you take neither? What happens if you stop acknowledging that a matrix exists? What happens if you stop acknowledging that the real world exists? Some interesting things that maybe might keep you up at night, I don't know. But I found that so fascinating, and I would love to see a Matrix TV show, a Matrix game, or a Matrix movie tackle that, because there has to be somebody who lives in the Matrix or lives in the real world. And this is the argument that they bring up to this. Why do I have to choose? Why do I have to take one? Why can't I take both? Why can't I take neither? What happens if I do? Does that unlock another special ability like Neo has? Does that do something else to that person? Does that actually bring them to the real world? Is this a new form of awakening? I don't know. I don't know how to think about it either. Because if you were in Neo's position from the first Matrix and Lawrence Fishburne offered you the red pill, the blue pill, the real world, or the Matrix, the fake world, what would you choose? Or would you question it? What happened if Neo had said, wait, I'm not taking either? What happened if Neo said, wait, I'm taking both? Does he end up in a new Matrix? Does he end up in the real world? Because there's theories out there that the real world in the Matrix is also a Matrix as well. And it's very, very fascinating to think about. And the medication or the drug that trans people who wanted to transition would take was a red pill. So you can see the parallels and you can see where the trans allegory is there. But as somebody who's not trans, who watched the original trilogy and now Matrix Resurrections, I don't particularly see that side of the movie, even though that's probably what the Wachowskis were trying to convey. But if you read the books that the Matrix movies are based on by Jean Baudrillard, Simulacre and Simulation, that wasn't about trans allegory either. So, am I right? Are the Wachowskis wrong? Are the Wachowskis the only ones that have a say in this because they made the movie? Or is the whole entire Matrix thing up for perception, up for interpretation, up for what you think it is, how it speaks to you? It's another debate that we can have as well. So, some interesting stuff was brought up in that article. Very interesting, very insightful. I'll leave the link in the description if you want to go give it a read for yourself and come up with your own kind of theory, your own kind of perception. But if you have one already, let me know in the comment section below. Red or blue, neither or both. Does this film speak to you as a trans allegory? Or does it speak to you in some other way? Let me know below. Thumbs up, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Come follow me on all the social medias. New video coming tomorrow. Appreciate you watching. And it's a very interesting thing to think about. When I was reading this article, I read it 3 or 4 times and I was thinking to myself, what would I do? And what happens if I do that? Because the movies never really brought that up. And I would love a movie to bring that up. What if somebody like, I don't know if you've seen the show True Detective Season 1 with Rust Cole, Matthew McConaughey's character, but for me, he'd be the type of character that would say, hold on a second here, what happens if I take both? What happens if I take neither? Why should I do this? It's very interesting, guys. Think about it and discuss below.